actually have a background in chemical engineering and finance, but somehow I ended up actually creating a sort of social incubator that is called Delitelabs. We started about 2 years ago, and actually I would like to tell you today just about 8 experiences or learnings that we've made when we try to use entrepreneurship as a means of economic reintegration into society. Okay? And I'll tell you in a little bit more about, obviously, what we're doing at Delitelabs and what we mean by that. But at first, I actually would like to pick up where Juan left off. And also the topic of today is actually social entrepreneurship, social value creation. And so let me just throw that out there right at the very beginning of this short session. We at Delitelabs, we are a non-profit startup school for newcomers here in the Netherlands, all right? And we help them from scratch to develop their business ideas here in this new country. So what we do is very social, and yes, you need someone who actually is crazy enough to try to earn money or try to create a company, an organization in that field, because it's very difficult to actually be economically sustainable in that field. That's what we've learned. So we are ourselves, as Delitelabs, definitely in the field of social entrepreneurship. However, our students, what we said is that we don't care if they become social entrepreneurs, yes or no, because our goal is economic integration, right? As long as they don't have uitkering anymore, welfare, we're happy because, mission accomplished. The funny thing though is if you apply design thinking, that's also what we do. And part of that is that you teach empathy, right? You have to understand your user. And what happens then very naturally is that actually probably about 80% of our projects are in the field of social entrepreneurship. And this is actually quite beautiful. So it's actually just how you teach a certain it's the innovation process, you can actually, without forcing anyone, create social enterprises, which is quite nice. Having said that up front, let me now tell you a little bit more about Delitelabs. First, a little bit the framework, where are we active in? And there are different ways of slicing and dicing this, but in one way or another, there are certain steps that you have to walk through in the entrepreneurial journey. Right? We're calling it right now pre-acceleration, incubation or acceleration, and then afterwards you have growth, right? And that's what you've heard from the Venture Lab. Very much active in the last, very much active right here. You have a small company, how do you really get them to grow? And there are then also different, let's say, activities that happen in these phases. In the very beginning, you have to find a team, right? And you have to actually first think about ideation, your business concept that you want to do. You should do some early prototyping to actually find out, does this make sense, yes or no? And typically what the way of supporting actually activities in that field can be, for example, teaching, right? Because there's a lot to learn that you have to do in this field. Then incubation acceleration, I'm using some jargon from the lean startup, probably a lot of you have read that, I assume. So problem solution fit, right? Then after the next step, you try to look at the product market fit. You maybe even because your prototyping and testing activities become a little bit more complex, you need some early pre-seed financing, and a lot of mentoring is needed at that stage typically. And then afterwards, access to finance, more substantial finance, access to customers, and actually trying to find real partners that can help you scale. We as Delitelabs, we said we want to be active here at this fuzzy front end, because especially in a country like the Netherlands, the startup ecosystem is very well developed. You have institutions like this where you sit right now. You have, some of the world's or Europe's best actually acceleration programs. They are here in this country. Startup Delta, Nelly Cruz is active. There's so much happening. But still, you're looking at the probably students here. You're very privileged that you are at such a university. You get access to all of this. And there are a lot of people out there. Theoretically they could, because of course there are no limitations how to apply any of these existing programs, but there are certain barriers. And that's what we thought, hey, we'll create a program where we just really push these people to get access to this existing startup ecosystem, right? This is what we did with Delitelabs. We call ourselves a pre-accelerator, and this was the field that we were active in. What this means is we prototyped, tried different things, typically 5 to 7 weeks, intensive full-time programs. Because what we believed is, that, you know, if you want to experience entrepreneurship and you've never done this before, or maybe you did it when you were back in Syria, you had a business, but a lot of the people that come to us, they don't have a team, they don't have an idea, and they have never done it before. So what we said, let's take 5 to 7 weeks and let's make them sweat as if they had their own company, right? Because this high workload and pressure you also have to experience. Next thing is, yes, design thinking, lean startup, you know, that's how things are being done nowadays. It's a lot about inspiration, because if you work with such a vulnerable target group, you know, they have been disillusioned a lot over the last several years. And so it's a lot about really trying to inspire them. We have to create a safe zone, you know, you're all familiar with a safe zone where you can actually fail and learn how to fail, and lots of mentoring. We apply a lot of experiential learning, because we also have to acknowledge that, you know, you get all the lectures from Stanford, etc., online on YouTube. So, I mean, who am I to try to explain the same thing in a better way than the guys who wrote these books, right? But at the same time, what we can do is, great, watch that stuff. We can distill the essence for you, and then we make you experience that, apply it. And this is where we come in, and we create a community. And so far, we did it for free. You know, bad business model. So keep in mind, pre-acceleration, that's where we were active in. And so I just want to share with you right now a couple of the things that we came across while we ran this since the beginning of the year. And also, please feel free, because we're quite a small group, whenever something sparks you, just shout and ask questions, right? That's allowed. So the first thing that we have found out is, apart from actually teaching entrepreneurship, if you work with such vulnerable groups like newcomers, then the first thing that you have to create is actually really this feeling of home, right? This very strong community, that they start to connect with each other, that they start supporting each other. Because very often, you know, they came alone. Of course, you meet some friends along the way. You try to, you know, we are inherently social creatures as humans, so we start chatting to each other immediately. But really creating the safe zone of something that feels much more than just a professional environment is really crucial to get the energy levels up and to get the trust levels up. That's one of the things that you have to create if you want to work with, let's say, vulnerable people. Because why is it so important? Again, entrepreneurship is tough, right? It's not easy even for the best educated people that we have in the Netherlands. So, let alone for someone who has actually already a lot of disadvantages to begin with. And so, to go for this very strong emotional roller coaster of entrepreneurship, you need this strong social fabric around you to support you and pull you up again. So that was one of the learnings. And there are 8 of them, right, if you want to come down towards the end. Teach the essence. In the beginning, the very first course that I did, I used to be a management consultant, right? So I had all these workshops with lots of stuff and different matrices, 2x2s, 3x3s, whatever. You know, our students get utterly and totally lost with that, you know? Because it is a certain way of working that you get trained at university, at least in our part of the world, but this type of tool method-based working sometimes can be also very confusing. If you're in a wall full of Post-its, what is it actually really all about? And then you probably all know the value proposition framework with these two, like the circle and the box that looks like a present, and all kinds of things in there. And in the end, I mean, when it comes to value proposition, it's a proposition. Imagine you're proposing to a girl, right? And so, hey, I'll promise you this future with me. This is like full of positive values. Do you want to go for it? Yes or no, right? And then you learn how to, apart from all these boxes that you would need to fill in the framework, what is the essence of a value proposition? So try to, you know, really distill what this is all about, and rather make them think along these lines than filling in templates. Teach the essence. Another thing, one size doesn't fit all. In the beginning, we kind of put together a program rather top down. So like, okay, well, 5 weeks, you put 2 trainers in front of them, invite a couple of guest speakers, and we'll make it intensive because we believe this is great for you to experience entrepreneurship. I still believe it's true. However, the reality is that vulnerable people, although they're officially unemployed, right, so they should have all the time in the world, oh, they have a lot of stuff going on, right? They have to have language courses, inburgerings courses, family reunifications, probably they live far away, have very long commutes, and from this point of view, just every day doesn't work. But then, you know, it's like a herding cats, because you never know who's available when. And the other issue is also, there are people that are at totally different learning speeds, right? Some people move much faster, and some people move slower, so this standardized classroom model is a little bit difficult. Connections are key, obviously, right? If you want to do business, you have to connect. But what we've learned is actually twofold. What works really well is if you connect newcomers together with Dutch people, because then you actually, in the teams already, you have, let's say, the social network of the Dutch business partner in there, on top of, obviously, the mentors that we are trying to provide with them, the kind of networking events, all the exposure that we're trying to give to our projects. You know, it also already works very well with trying to mix, actually, the classes, if you want to think in terms of classes. And then, here's another one. Well, we were active in pre-acceleration, but we gave our first courses back in April. So there is actually a longer time span. And we kind of abandoned them after 5 weeks, tried to give them a good mentor and good luck and fly. But of course, we started observing how these teams develop further. And then one of the very big challenges is, well, access to finance, right? Again, it's even tough for people here to get access to finance. So think about what is it with someone who has no credit history, who just came and all he has is an Uitkering and actually no collateral whatsoever, right? So loans are a bit difficult. Equity is a bit difficult because, hey, what's the actually even the growth horizon? I mean, does this person have to return after 3 or 5 years? Can this person stay here? Is it trustworthy? And then also in general, when it comes to such, let's say, venture projects that are being created, that's one of the big challenges, is like how to de-risk them, right? How can you make it attractive for money that's obviously out there to also invest into actually such startup projects? That's also one of the big things that we have to solve somehow. And that's also something that we're actually working on at the moment to see what kind of different options we have in that space. Yeah, the second one right here is also for getting off the ground. It's obviously some, let's say, legal advice on incorporation, etc. But this is more, let's say, a formal factor. But what's very interesting is that newcomers very often, you know, they come from regimes or contexts where navigating the, let's say, governmental field is very difficult. And actually, on the one hand, saying, hey, there is actually, how do you call it, legal certainty on the one hand in the Netherlands, but on the other hand, there are a lot of regulations that will certainly apply to whatever you try to do. Right? So this is a lot of education is also needed in that space. And then now, actually, from a totally different angle, now I'm just not talking from the angle from our students or what works for our students or participants, but also Delitelabs, because maybe someone of you thought, hey, it would be cool to set up such a pre-accelerator or accelerator and help others to create their businesses. There are a couple of challenges around that as well. And so now from this other perspective. First of all, teachers are expensive, right? Especially if you want to have good teachers of good quality. It's you know, very, very obvious. But at the same time, you know, you really run through this program. And if you try to start your own social enterprise, like what we are doing with Delitelabs, you know, I'm apparently not too bad with convincing people of doing something for free, but there's a limit to that, you know? You cannot constantly ask people to do stuff for free for you because your social goal is so great. And then, yeah, how to deal with that, right? And for example, teachers are expensive. What we are moving away now from is from this original model. You have a teacher, a trainer, you have 20, 25 people listening, and you have also this kind of scaling limitation, if you think about it from that point of view, 1 to 25, right? And this one you have to pay. Of course, there are lots of solutions. You have these massive online courses and so on and so forth, but this doesn't work here because you do need face-to-face contact with these target groups, right? Because there's so much beyond the actual content that you have to learn, that you need human interaction. So the online courses standalone doesn't work, and the teachers are actually too expensive because you need some really experienced people from the business world, and they cost, if you pay them at market price, 1,500 plus per day. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to crowdsource that, right? So we're going from many to many teaching. Here then the issue is, already in our regular course with all the guest speakers, scheduling is quite difficult. It's quite an extensive messes that you constantly have to sort out. And if you don't have a big back office, this can be quite a burden. And at this point in time, we don't have a crowdsourced model yet. So I'm already afraid of how this will look like next year. However, this is where technology kicks in. So we at the moment develop actually a web platform where all the teachers can start booking their own sessions, so that we automate actually this part of it. And yeah, go ahead.
You're saying the other one that you need one-to-one connection.
Mm-hmm.
But can't you use technology for that as well, like scheduling with some kind of Skype meeting or something like that?
Yes, and probably there will be a sweet spot between efficiency and one-to-one connection in a blended learning model. Yeah? I very much agree with that. However, and that's back to the very beginning. And I'm not sure how many people were here. We had actually a prototyping week here 4 weeks ago. And I think people who have seen this group, it was actually one of the most striking things, apart from the great business ideas, obviously, is actually this warmth and connection. These were individuals that didn't know each other before the course, right? And this is this also for design thinking, and it's also what I actually taught towards corporates, and not only in the social context. It is all about being human, right? And you actually have to learn how to trust your belly, apart from having all the numbers right, obviously, as well, right? And this kind of humanity that you have to teach to be a good entrepreneur in our modern society, well, you can't do that by Skype, right? Or only limited, and this is why blended is in my opinion, so important. Blended learning. Yeah. So, again, scheduling is difficult, especially if you're a small social enterprise that's just starting up, where you don't have a big back office, trying to puzzle out all these bookings. Well, we try to automate that. And then making it sustainable, as in making us sustainable. Not only not only the projects that we support, that they can be sustainable, but we have to be somehow sustainable as well. And, well, obviously, it's quite easy to come up with all these great ideas, what you can fill in the business model canvas, in the revenue box, and you tick all these different things, but actually getting that into action is quite difficult. And here in this field, for example, revenue models, let's turn this into a question. So for Delitelabs, right? So we are a very, very early stage incubator, if you want. So what kind of revenue models do you see for us? Any ideas?
Can I ask you one other question?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Sorry to be rude. Does all the participants take you seriously? Does all the participants take you seriously? Do they actually are seriously about doing a business, or are they more, we have nothing to do, we just want to, it's for free, so we just do it?
Not all of them, and that is very true. The majority does, right? So typically what you see is in the first 2 or 3 days, if we start with 25, 3, 4, 5 will drop. And that's okay, we expect that, we recruit for that. Then the dropout rate is actually quite small. And what we see, especially if you're active in the pre-acceleration phase, it is all about activating people. And activating, well, we can call it entrepreneurship. I personally love it, calling it like taking own initiative. And in German, of course, we have a word for that, which is Eigeninitiative. But so that's what it's all about. And so if you want to, in the very beginning, the skills that you teach can be applied and have positive social impact in many different areas. However, we also have to be very much aware, in the end, we are an incubator. Our goal is to make sustainable businesses as a means of economic reintegration. So there's a limit as to, how much we are a nice course for anyone who wants to be entertained for 5 weeks, compared to really creating businesses here, right? So that's a little bit of balance.
Can you understand the trouble, let's say?
Yes. And it's also actually in the future, talking revenue models. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch to a subscription model, right? So you can come to Delitelabs. You can come every day if you want. There will be a co-working space. Knocking on wood, I hope that we'll get actually the Impact Hub in Amsterdam to cooperate with, because it's a beautiful ecosystem to sit in. So you can sit there every day. There will be activities every day. Every day there will be one lecture that you can attend if you want, if you have time. And once you're ready, then there will be actually a mentor acceleration journey, right? And you can pay per month. It will be in the range of 100 or 200 euros, which sounds a lot, but, and that's the next trick about the revenue model, actually every refugee gets a loan from Duo, where they can spend up to 10,000 euros on their inburgering, right? And because we actually help you to, you know, really build a business in Dutch society, so there is probably no better way of inburgering, because you have to sell to Dutch customers, right? And in this way, we're trying to get accredited at the moment that we qualify actually for the Duo loans, and this can be a very nice income source. The next thing is, and that's actually also interesting because a lot of you are active in the field of commercialization, innovation. You know, the big challenge that we have is, even if you're in the for-profit incubation business, it's tough, right? I mean, only 1 out of 10 businesses turns into something, and you have the best graduates from the best universities, and they still don't have better rates, right? And then typically, you know how it goes, like angel investors are looking for multiples of 20, 30 times to exit. So you have to have all these hockey stick growth success stories in your portfolio to actually make this work. And then here we're now dealing with actually another connection point towards the story that Juan told us, is that, you know, here we're in the Western world. We are in a saturated market. We're in a fully developed economy. You don't have these opportunities en masse that you would see in developing countries. We are very much aware of that, right? So where to carve out your niche? And if you want to have actually a hockey stick success story, you probably have to be the very best in the world in a certain space, right? Because otherwise you're not at the frontier of your industry anymore, or you're very, very lucky. And then, so if you look at these challenges, so per definition, probably with the population that we work, the chance of a hockey stick is virtually zero. So what we have to actually try right now is try to understand actually investor mindsets to see, hey, what kind of portfolios can we build? Probably, we're not sure yet, but there are certain statistics that suggest actually micro SMEs by migrants are actually rather default proof and rather sustainable. They don't have that much growth, but if you have a portfolio actually of a bunch of them together, if you accept a lower return rate with actually lower risk, then we can, don't talk about multiples, but we can probably, you know, are in the social investment space, you know, offer returns of 3, 4, 5%. So you're actually earning money. It feels much better than a donation, and you're doing good at the same time, right? So that's now the space that we're working into, that we explore here as an additional possibility for us to earn money. That we do have actually some shares in these companies, but not the big Silicon Valley exit stories, but actually much smaller, collecting the little peanuts along the way.
And it also makes maybe then realize more that it's serious. You take some shares in it, you take something about it.
Exactly, because it's not a game.
Yeah.
It is serious business. And this is, in the end, what we're going to do, because so far we were in this fuzzy front end, and I'm trying to get to the point where you have a professional, professionally pitched business concept, right? It's great to have, but you know, it's not more than that. Ideally, you've prototyped a little bit, you have collected some user experiences, but this is where you were. And this is what we always said, we get you to the starting line. But what we've seen is that the continuation after the starting line didn't really happen. We had like 3, 4 programs identified in the Netherlands where we thought, hey, this is where our students could continue. But somehow this step never really happened. Various reasons for that. And so we figured, hey, we have to continue to support. We don't want to start replicating scale programs. It's a totally different ballgame. But we believe we have to actually get into the actual incubation space. We have to, and this sounds now a little bit tricky, but we have to push actually our students to the point of no return. And it is once in the KVK, once you actually have a deal with your gemeente that your uitkering is at risk if you don't perform, you know, then you're really going to run for your business, no matter what. Together with access to pre-seed financing and continued mentoring that's industry specific. So that's Delitelabs 2.0. And you know, as a social enterprise, we're trying to be very smart on the revenue side to identify new revenue streams. And at the same time, what I've mentioned, we're trying to kind of lower our costs so that at some point we actually would reach a break even. And that is the crowdsourced teaching, including the full flexibility so that we can have more students that pay the subscriptions. And that's Delitelabs 2.0 that we hope to launch in April. And there is actually now this Delitelabs 2.0 actually in Amsterdam. We're very happy to be one of the living labs, so of the guinea pigs, where the PC3 team can do some research. But actually, as we speak, we're working on something called Funky, or Funke, which means sparks in German. And I'd love to have some feedback on that, because this name is not official yet. We're submitting this EU grant proposal in 2 weeks. And it's a future for underemployed newcomers through knowledge and entrepreneurship, the Funky program. And we are working together with Singa in France. Maybe some of you have heard of them. They actually started 4 years ago, one of the pioneers in the field for, let's say, refugee entrepreneurship. We're partnering with some people in Berlin and in London who do the same thing with us. So we have, let's say, the 4 pioneering grassroots initiatives that combine modern startup entrepreneurship to tackle the refugee crisis, as compared to, you've always had, let's say, startup or micro SMEs initiatives probably in every larger city, but